Okay, we'd like to welcome everybody to our weekly Krishna book reading to Srila Prabhupada here in Sri Vrindavan Dham. And this week we're on chapter 82. So before we begin, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namo Vishnuvedaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Bacharane Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paskaja Deshatarne. And to each other, Panchakalpadurvishcha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Chapter 2. Lord Krishna and Balaram meet the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Once upon a time, while Lord Krishna and Balaram were living peacefully in their great city of Dwarka, there was the rare occasion of a full solar eclipse, such as takes place at the end of every kalpa or day of Brahma. At the end of every kalpa, the sun is covered by a great cloud, and incessant rain covers the lower planetary systems up to Swargaloka. By astronomical calculation, people were informed about this great eclipse prior to its taking place, and therefore everyone, both men and women, decided to assemble at the holy place in Kurukshetra known as Samanta Panchaka.
The Samanta Panchaka pilgrim site is celebrated because Lord Parshuram performed great sacrifice there. After killing all Kshatriyas in the world 21 times, when Lord Parshuram killed all the Kshatriyas, their accumulated blood flowed like a stream. Lord Parshuram dug 5 big lakes at the Samankanta Panchaka and filled them with this blood. Lord Parshuram is Vishnu Tattva, as stated in Ipucha. Vishnu Tattva cannot be contaminated by any sinful activities. Yet, although Lord Parshuram is fully powerful and uncontaminated in order to exhibit ideal character, he performed great sacrifice at the Samankanta Panchaka to atone for his so-called sinful killing of Kshatriya by his example. Lord Parshuram established that the killing art, although sometimes necessary, is not good. Lord Parshuram considered himself capable for the sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. Therefore, how much more culpable are we for such abnormal, unsentient acts? Thus, from the time immemorial, the killing of a living entity is promoted all over the world.
Taking advantage of the occasion of the solar eclipse, all important persons from all parts of Bharatavarsha visited the holy place of pilgrimage. Some of the important personalities are mentioned as follows. Among the elderly persons were Akrura, Vasudeva, and Ugrasena. And among the younger generations were Gada, Pradyumna, Samba, and many other members of the Yadu dynasty who had come there with a view to atone for sinful activities accrued in the course of discharging their respective duties. Because almost all the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kurukshetra, some important personalities like Aniruddha, the son of Pradyumna, and Kritavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchandra, Shuka, and Sharana, remained in Dwarka to protect the city.
All the members of the Yadu dynasty were naturally very beautiful, yet on this occasion, when they appeared duly decorated with gold necklaces and flower garlands, dressed in valuable clothing, and properly armed with their respective weapons, their natural beauty and personalities were 100 times enhanced. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kurukshetra in their gorgeously decorated chariots, which resembled the airplanes of the demigods and which were pulled by big horses that moved like the waves of the ocean. Some Yadus rode on sturdy, stalwart elephants that moved like the clouds in the sky. The wives were carried on beautiful palanquins by beautiful men, whose features resembled those of Vidyadharas. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigods of heaven.
After arriving in Kurukshetra, the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths ceremoniously with self-control and enjoined in the Shastras. And they observed fasting for the whole period of the eclipse in order to nullify the reactions of their sinful activities. Since it is a Vedic custom to give in charity as much as possible during the hours of the eclipse, the members of the Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special feature of these cows was that they had golden ankle belts and flower garlands on their necks.
All the members of the Yadu dynasty again took their baths in the After the eclipse, all the members of the Yadu dynasty again took their baths in the lakes created by Lord Parasurama. Then they sumptuously fed the Brahmanas with first-class cooked food, all prepared in butter. According to the Vedic system, there are two classes of food. One is called raw food and the other is called cooked food. Raw food does not indicate raw vegetables and raw grains, but food boiled in water, whereas cooked food is made in ghee. Chapatis, dal, rice, and ordinary vegetables are called raw foods, as are fruits and salads. But puris, kachuris, samosas, sweet balls, and so on are called cooked foods. All the Brahmanas invited on that occasion by the members of the Yadu dynasty were fed sumptuously with cooked food.
The ceremonial functions performed by the members of the Yadu dynasty externally resembled the ritualistic ceremonies performed by karmis. Then a karmi performs some ritualistic ceremony. His ambition is sense gratification. Good position, good wife, good house, good children, or good wealth. But the ambition of the members of the Yadu dynasty was different. Their ambition was to offer Krishna perpetual devotion with faith. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were great devotees. As such, after many births of accumulated pious activities, they were given the chance to associate with Lord Krishna. In going to take their baths in the place of pilgrimage of Kurukshetra, in observing the regulative principles during the solar eclipse, or in feeding the Brahmanas in all their activities, they simply thought of devotion to Krishna. In their ideal worshipful Lord was Krishna and no one else.
After the Brahmanas are fed, It is the custom for the host, with their permission, to accept prasadam. Thus, with the permission of the brahmanas, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took lunch. Then they selected resting places underneath big shady trees, and when they had taken sufficient rest, they prepared to receive visitors, among whom were relatives and friends, as well as many subordinates, kings, and rulers. There were the rulers of Matsya province, Usanara province, Koshala province, Vidarbha, Kuru, Srinjaya, Cambodia, Kekaya, Madras, Kunti, Anarta, Kerala province, and many other countries and provinces. Some of the rulers belonged to opposing parties, and some were friends. But above all, the visitors from Vrindavan were most prominent. The residents of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda Maharaj, had been living in great anxiety because of separation from Krishna and Balaram. Taking advantage of the solar eclipse, they all came to see their life and soul, Krishna and Balaram.
The inhabitants of Vrindavan were well-wisher and the intimate friends of Yadu dynasty. This meeting of two parties after a long separation was very touching incident. All the Yadus and the residents of Vrindavan felt such a great pleasure in meeting and talking together that it was unique scene. Meeting after a long separation, they were all jubilant, their hearts troubled, and their faces appeared like a freshly bloomed lotus flower. Drops of tears fell from their eyes. The hairs on their bodies stood on end, and because of their extreme anxiety, they were temporarily speechless. In other words, they drove into the ocean of happiness.
Where is that? Okay. While the men were meeting in that way, the women also met one another in the same manner. They embraced one another in great friendship, smiling very mildly, and looked at one another with much affection. When they were embracing one another in their arms, the saffron and kumkum sprayed on their breast were exchanged from one person to another, and they all felt heavily ecstasy. Due to such heart-to-heart embracing, torrents of tears glided down their cheeks. The juniors were offering obeisances to elders, and the elders were offering blessings.
Blessing to the juniors.
Blessings to the juniors.
Thus they welcomed.
Thus they welcome one another and ask after one another's welfare. Ultimately, however, all their talks were only of Krishna. All the neighbors and relatives were concerned with the Lord, connected with the Lord. And Krishna's pastime in this world. And as such, Krishna was center of activities.
Of all their activities.
It's hard for him on the phone, that's why I was taking care of
Okay.
whatever activities they perform, social, political, religious.
Whatever the activities they perform, social, political, religion, and conversation, were transcendental.
The real elevation of human life rests on knowledge and renunciation, As stated in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service rendered to Krishna automatically produces perfect knowledge and renunciation. The family members of the Yadu dynasty and the cowherds of Vrindavan had their minds fixed on Krishna. That is the symptom of perfect knowledge. And because their minds were always engaged in Krishna, they were automatically freed from all material activities. This stage of life is called Yukta Vairagya, as enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. Knowledge and renunciation, therefore, do not mean dry speculation and renunciation of activities. Rather, one must start speaking and acting only in relationship with Krishna. In this meeting at Kurukshetra, Kunti Devi and Vasudeva, who were sister and brother, met after a long separation, along with their respective sons and daughters-in-law, children and other family members. By talking among themselves, they soon forgot all their past miseries. Kunti Devi especially addressed her brother Vasudeva as follows: "My dear brother, I am very unfortunate because not one of my desires has ever been fulfilled. Otherwise, how could it happen that although I have such a saintly brother as you, perfect in all respects, you did not inquire from me as to how I was passing my days in a distressed condition of life?" It appears that Kunti Devi was remembering the miserable days when she had been banished with her sons through the mischievous plans of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. She continued, "My dear brother, I can understand that when providence goes against someone, even one's nearest relatives forget him. In such a condition, even one's father, one's mother, or one's own children will forget him. Therefore, my dear brother, I do not accuse you."
Vasudeva replied to his sister, "My dear sister, do not be sorry and do not blame me in that way. We should always remember that we are all only toys in the hands of Providence. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is under His control only that all kinds of fruitive actions and their reactions take place. My dear sister, you know that we were very much harassed by King Kamsa, and by his persecutions we were scattered here and there. We were always full of anxieties. Only in the last few days have we returned to our own places by the grace of God."
After this conversation, Vasudev and Ugrasen received the kings who came to see them, and they warmly welcomed them all. Seeing Lord Krishna present on the spot, all the visitors felt transcendental pleasure and became very peaceful. Some of the prominent visitors were as follows: Bhishma Dev, Dronacharya, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, Gandhari, along with their sons, King Yudhishthira, along with his wife, and the Pandavas, along with the Kunti, as well as Sanjaya, Vidur, Kripacharya, Kunti Bhoj, Virat, Bhishmaka, King Naganajit, Purujit, Draupad, Shalya, Drishtaketu, the king of Kashi, Damaghosha, Vishalaksh, the king of Mithila, the king of Madras, formerly known as Madra, the king of Kekai, Yudamanyu, Susaram, Bahalika, along with his sons, and many other rulers subordinate to King Yudhishthira.
When they saw Lord Krishna with his thousands of queens, they became fully satisfied at the sight of such beauty and transcendental opulence. All who were there personally visited Lord Brahma and Krishna, and being properly welcomed by the Lord, they began to glorify the members of the Yadu dynasty, especially Krishna and Balarama, because he was the king of the Bhojas. Ugrasena was considered the chief Yadu, and therefore the visitors specifically addressed him, Your Majesty Ugrasena, king of the Bhojas. Factually, the Yadus are the only persons within this world who are perfect in all respects. All glory is unto you. All glory is unto you. The specific condition of your perfection is that you are always seeing Lord Krishna, who is sought after by many mystic yogis undergoing severe austerities and penances for great numbers of years. All of you are in direct touch with Lord Krishna at every moment.
All the Vedic hymns glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Ganges water is considered sanctified because of its being the water used to wash the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The Vedic scriptures are nothing but the injunctions of Lord Krishna. The purpose of the study of all the Vedas is to know Krishna. Therefore, the words of Krishna and the message of his pastimes are always purifying. By the influence of time and circumstances, all the opulences of the world, they're almost completely wiped out since Krishna has appeared on this planet. All auspicious features have again appeared due to the touch of his lotus feet. Because of his presence, all our ambitions and desires are gradually being fulfilled. Your Majesty, King of the Bhojas, you are related with the Yadu dynasty by matrimonial relationship, and by blood relationship also. As a result, you are constantly associating with the Lord Krishna, and you have no difficulty in seeing him or touching him at any time. Lord Krishna moves with you, talks with you, sits with you, rests with you, and dines with you. The Yadus appear to be always engaged in worldly affairs, which are considered to be the royal road to hell. But due to the presence of Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead in the Vishnu category, who is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, all of you are factually relieved from all material contamination and are situated in the transcendental position of liberation and Brahman existence.
When Nanda Maharaj and the other residents of Vrindavan had heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra because of the solar eclipse, and that all the members of the Yadu dynasty would also be there, they had immediately prepared to go there. King Nanda, accompanied by his cowherd men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on bullock carts, and all of the Vrindavan residents had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved sons, Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. When the cowherd men of Vrindavan arrived in Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty were most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vrindavan, they stood up to welcome them and appeared to have regained their life. All the Yadus and Vrindavan residents had been very eager to meet, and when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction and remained in embrace for a considerable time.
As soon as Vasudev saw Nanda Maharaj, Vasudev jumped up and ran over to him and embraced him with very affection. Vasudev began to narrate his own past history. how he had been imprisoned by King Kamsa, how his babies had been killed, how immediately after Krishna's birth he had carried Krishna to place of Nand Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balram had been raised by the Nand Maharaj and his queens, Yashoda as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balram and Krishna also embraced King Nanda and Mother Yashoda, and then they offered their respect unto their lotus feet by bowing down because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yashoda. Lord Krishna and Balram being choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak, the most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yashoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balram, King Nanda and Yashoda had been meagered into the great distress for very long time. Now, after meeting them and embracing them, all their suffering were mitigated.
After this, Krishna's mother Devaki and Balram's mother Rohini both embraced Mother Yasoda. They said, "Dear Queen Yasoda Devi, you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us, and when we remember you were we are immediate overwhelmed by the thought of your friend." I don't know your glasses.
We are overwhelmed. That was on this side. Can you help him?
King's mother Devi.
Sorry, sweetie.
After this,
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping you could share the board.
Okay. After this, Krishna's mother Devaki and Balram's mother Rohini both embraced Mother Yasoda. They said, "Dear Queen Yasoda Devi, you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us, and when we remember you are immediately overwhelmed by the thought of your friendly activities. We are so indebted to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of the King of Heaven, it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior towards us. When Krishna and Balram were born, they even saw their real father and mother. They were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, fostering them as the birds take care of their offspring in the nest. You have nicely nourished and loved them, and have performed many auspicious religious ceremonies for their benefit.
Actually, they are not our sons. They belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and you are the real father and mother of Krishna and Balarama. As long as they were under your care, they had not even a pinch of difficulty. Under your protection, they were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. This most affectionate care which you have taken for them is completely befitting your elevated position.
The most noble personalities do not discriminate between their own sons and the sons of others, and there cannot be any personalities more noble than Nanda Maharaj and you.
As far as the gopis of Vrindavan were concerned, from the very beginning of their lives, they did not know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balarama were their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna that they could not tolerate not seeing him even momentarily when their eyelids blinked and impeded their vision. They condemned Brahma, the creator of the body, because he foolishly made eyelids which blinked and checked their seeing Krishna, because they had been separated from Krishna for so many years. The gopis, having come along with Nanda, Maharaj and Mother Yasoda, felt intense ecstasy upon seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how eager the gopis were to see Krishna again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him inside their hearts through their eyes and embraced them to their full satisfaction. Even though they were embracing Krishna only mentally, they became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with joy that, for the time being, they completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance they achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing him in their minds, and therefore, since he is present in everyone's heart, he reciprocated the embracing from within.
Krishna was sitting with his mother Yashoda and his other mothers Devaki and Rohini. But when the mothers engaged in talking, he took the opportunity and went to a secluded place to meet the gopis. As soon as he approached the gopis, the Lord smiled, and after embracing them and inquiring about their welfare, he began to encourage them, saying, "My dear friends, you know that Lord Balram and I left Vrindavan just to please our relatives and family members. Thus, we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies and were obliged to forget you, who was so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand that I have been ungrateful to you, but still I know that you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of us, although we have had to leave you behind? My dear gopis, do you now dislike remembering me, considering me to have been ungrateful to you? Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously?
After all, you should know that it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who after all is the supreme controller and does as he desires. He caused the intermingling of different persons and again disperse them as he desires. Sometimes we see that a strong wind will mingle together clouds, atomic particles of dust, or broken pieces of cotton, and after the strong wind subsides, all the clouds, particles of dust, and pieces of cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the creator of everything. The objects we see are different manifestations of His energy. By His supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that ultimately we are absolutely dependent on His will.
Fortunately, you have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of association with me. Any living entity who develops such unalloyed devotion Devotional affection for me certainly at the end goes back to home, back to Godhead. In other words, unalloyed devotional service and affection for me are the cause of supreme liberation.
My dear Gopi friends, you may know from me that it is my energies only which are acting everywhere. Take, for example, an earthen pot. It is nothing but the combination of earth, water, air, fire, and the sky. It is always of the same physical composition, whether in its beginning, during its existence, or after its annihilation. When it is created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. While it remains, it is the same in composition, and when it is broken and annihilated, it is different ingredients. Its different ingredients are conserved in different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of this cosmic manifestation, during its maintenance and after its dissolution, everything is but a different manifestation of my energy. And because the energy is not separate from me, it is to be concluded that I am existing in everything.
In the same way, the body of a living being is nothing but a composition of the 5 elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his false conception of himself as the supreme enjoyer. This false ego of the living entity is the cause of his imprisonment in material existence. As the supreme absolute truth, I am transcendental to the living entity as well as to his material embodiment. The 2 energies, material and spiritual, both act under my supreme control. My dear gopis, I request that instead of being afflicted, you try to accept everything with a philosophical attitude. Then you will understand that you are always with me and that there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one another.
This important instruction by Lord Krishna to the gopis can be utilized by all devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the base of inconceivable simultaneity, oneness and difference. In Bhagavad-Gita, Lord Krishna says that he is present everywhere in his impersonal future, everything exists in him. But still he is not personally present everywhere. The cosmos manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy. And because the energy is not different from the energetic, nothing is different from Krishna. When this absolute consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is absent, we are separated from Krishna. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we are not separated from Krishna. The process of devotional service is the reveal of the Krishna consciousness. And if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separated from Krishna, then he can utilize the material energy and its product in the service of the Lord. But in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely put himself in the position of enjoyer of the material world, and being thus in the material entanglement, is forced by the material energy to continue his material exile. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-Gita. Although a living entity is forced to act by the material energy, he falsely thinks that he is the all in all and the supreme enjoyer.
If the devotee knows perfectly that the Archa-vigraha or deity form of Lord Krishna in the temple is exactly the same as Satchidananda Vigraha, as Krishna himself, then his service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia and the food offered to the deity are also not separate from Krishna. One has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the acharyas, and thus, under the superior guidance, Krishna realization is fully possible even in this material existence.
The gopis have been instructed by Krishna in this philosophy of simultaneous oneness and difference, remained always in Krishna consciousness, and thus became liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of the living entity who falsely presents himself as the enjoyer of the material world is called Jiva Kosha, which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis, but anyone who follows these instructions of Krishna is immediately freed from the Jiva Kosha, imprisonment. A person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egoism. He utilizes everything in Krishna's service and is not at all any time separated from Krishna. The gopis therefore pray to Krishna, "Dear Krishna, from your navel emanated the original lotus flower, which is the birth site of Brahma, the creator. No one can estimate your glories or your opulence, which therefore remains always a mystery, even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all yogic power. However, the conditioned soul, fallen in the dark well of this materialistic existence, can very easily take shelter of your lotus feet. Thus, his deliverance is guaranteed."
The gopis continued, "Dear Krishna, we are always busy in our family affairs. We therefore request you that you remain within our hearts as the rising sun. That will be your greatest benediction. The gopis are always liberated souls because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. They only pretended to be entangled in household affairs in Vrindavan. Because of their separation from Krishna, he might have asked them to return with him to his capital city, Dwarka. But the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, were not interested in the idea of going with Krishna to Dwarka. They wanted to remain busy in Vrindavan and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. They immediately invited Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. This transcendental emotional existence of the gopis is the basic principle of Lord Chaitanya's teaching. The Rath Yatra festival observed by Lord Chaitanya is the emotional process of taking Krishna back to Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani refused to go with Krishna to Dwarka to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulence, for she wanted to enjoy his company in the original Vrindavan atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, never goes away from Vrindavan, and the gopis and the other residents of Vrindavan remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 82nd chapter of Krishna. Lord Krishna and Balram meet the inhabitants of Vrindavan.
Next chapter. Chapter 83, Draupadi meets the Queen of Krishna. There were many visitors who came to see Krishna, and among them were the Pandavas, headed by King Yudhishthir. After taking with the gopis and bestowing upon them the greatest benediction, Lord Krishna welcomed King Yudhishthir and other relatives who had come to see him. He first of all inquired from them whether their situation was auspicious. Actually, there is no question of ill fortune for anyone who sees the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Yet, when Lord Krishna, as a matter of etiquette, inquired from King Yudhishthir about his welfare, the king became very happy by such a reception and addressed the Lord thus: My dear Lord Krishna, great personalities and devotees in full Krishna consciousness always think of your lotus feet and remain fully satisfied by drinking the nectar of transcendental bliss. The nectar which they constantly drink sometimes come out of their mouths and is sprinkled on others as a narration of your transcendental activities. This nectar coming from the mouth of a devotee is so powerful that if one is fortunate enough to have the opportunity to drink it, he is immediately freed from the continuous journey of birth and death. Our material existence is caused by our forgetfulness of our personality, of your personality. But it should be always no. But fortunately, the darkness of forgetfulness is immediately dissipated if one is privileged to hear about your glories. Therefore, my dear Lord, where is the possibility of ill fortune for one who is constantly engaged in hearing your glorious activities?
Since we are fully surrendered unto you and have no other shelter than your lotus feet, we are always confident of our good fortune. My dear Lord, you are the ocean of unlimited knowledge and transcendental bliss. The result of the action of mental concoction is to exist in the three temporary phases of material life: wakefulness, sleep, and deep sleep. But these conditions cannot exist in Krishna consciousness. All such reactions are invalidated by practice of Krishna consciousness. You are the ultimate destination of all liberated persons. Out of your independent will only, you have descended on this earth by the use of your own internal potency, Yogamaya, and in order to re-establish the Vedic principles of life, you have appeared just like an ordinary human being. Since you are the Supreme Person, there cannot therefore be any ill luck for one who has fully surrendered unto you.
When Lord Krishna was busy meeting various kinds of visitors, and while they were engaged in offering prayers to the Lord, the female members of the Kuru dynasty and the Yadu dynasty took the opportunity to meet with one another and engage in talk of Lord Krishna transcendental pastimes. The first inquiry was made by Draupadi to the wives of Lord Krishna. She addressed them: My dear Rukmini, Bhadra, Jambavati, Satya, Satyabhama, Kalindi, Shabiya, Mitravinda, Lakshmana, Rohini, and all the other wives of Lord Krishna, will you please let us know how Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accepted you as his wives and married you in pursuance of the marriage ceremonies of ordinary human beings?
To this question, the chief of the queens, Rukmini Devi, replied, "My dear Draupadi, it was practically a settled fact that princes like Jarasandha wanted me to marry King Shishupal, and as is usual, all the princes present during the marriage ceremony were prepared with their armor and weapons to fight with any rival who dared to stop the marriage. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead kidnapped me, the way a lion takes away a lamb from the flock. This was not, however, a very wondrous act for Lord Krishna, because anyone who claims to be a great hero or king within this world is subordinate to the lotus feet of the Lord. All kings touch their helmets to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. My dear Draupadi, it is my eternal desire that life after life I be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, who is the reservoir of all pleasure and beauty. This is my only desire and ambition in life."
After this, Satyabhama began to speak. She said, "My dear Draupadi, my father was very much affected by the death of his brother Prasenna, and he falsely accused Lord Krishna of killing his brother and stealing the Samankanta jewel, which had actually been taken by Jambuvan. Lord Krishna, in order to establish his pure character, fought with Jambuvan and rescued the Samankanta jewel, which he later delivered to my father. My father was very much ashamed and sorry for accusing Lord Krishna of his brother's death. After getting back the Samankanta jewel, he thought it is wise to rectify his mistake. So, although he had promised others my hand in marriage, he submitted the jewel and me at the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus I was accepted as his maidservant and wife."
After this, Jambati replied to Draupadi's question. She said, "My dear Draupadi, when Lord Krishna attacked my father Jamban, the king of Rakshas, my father did not know that Lord Krishna was his former master, Lord Ramchandra, the husband of Sita. Not knowing the identity of Lord Krishna, my father fought with him continuously for 27 days. After this period, when he became fatigued, he could understand that since no one but Lord Ramachandra could defeat him, his opponent, Lord Krishna, must be the same Lord Ramachandra. He thus came to his senses and immediately returned the Samantak jewel.
Further to satisfy.
Okay.
Further
to satisfy the Lord, he presented me to him to become his wife. In this way, I was married to Lord, and thus my desire to be a servitor of Krishna, life after life, was fulfilled.
After this, Kalindi said, "My dear Draupadi, I was engaged in great austerities and penances to get Lord Krishna as my husband. When he became aware of this fact, he very kindly came to me with his friend Arjuna
and accepted me as his wife. Lord Krishna then took me away from the bank of the Yamuna, and since then I've been engaged in the house of Lord Krishna as a sweeper, and the Lord is treating me as his wife. After this, Mitravinda said, My dear Draupadi, there was a great assembly of princes at my Swayamvara ceremony, the personal selection of a husband. Lord Krishna was also present in that meeting, and he accepted me as his maidservant by defeating all the other princes there. He immediately took me away to Dwarka, exactly a lion takes its prey from a pack of dogs. When I was thus taken away by Lord Krishna, my brothers wanted to fire him, and later they were defeated. Thus my desire to become a maidservant of Krishna life after life was fulfilled.
After this, Satya addressed Draupadi in this way. My dear Draupadi, my father arranged for an assembly for my Swayamvara, and to test the strength and heroism of the prospective bridegrooms, he stipulated that they each fight with his 7 ferocious bulls, which had long, sharp horns. Many heroic prospects tried to defeat the bulls, but unfortunately they were all severely struck, and they returned to their homes as defeated invalids. When Lord Sri Krishna came, he fought with the bulls. They were just like playthings for him. He captured the bulls and roped each one of them by their nostrils. Thus, they came under his control, just as a goat's small kids come very easily under the control of children. My father was very much pleased and married me to the Lord Krishna with great pomp, giving as many dowry, many divisions of soldiers, horses, chariots, and elephants, along with hundreds of maidservants. Thus, Lord Krishna brought me to his capital city, Dwarka. On the way back, he was assaulted by many princes, but Lord Krishna defeated them, all of them, and thus I have the privilege of serving his lotus feet as a maidservant.
After this, Bhadra began to speak. She said, My dear Draupadi, Lord Krishna is the son of my maternal uncle. Fortunately, I became attracted to his lotus feet. When my father understood these feelings of mine, he personally arranged for my marriage, inviting Lord Krishna to marry me and giving him in dowry 1 Akshauhini, or a division of armed forces, along with many maidservants and other royal paraphernalia. I do not know whether I shall be able to have the shelter of Lord Krishna life after life, but still I pray to the Lord that wherever I may take my birth, I may not forget my relationship with his lotus feet.
Then Lakshmana said, My dear queen, many times I have heard the great sage Narada glorifying the pastimes of Lord Krishna. I became attracted to the lotus feet of Krishna when I heard Narada say that the goddess of fortune Lakshmi was also attracted to his lotus feet. Since then, I have always been thinking of him, and thus my attraction for him was increased. My dear queen, my father was very affectionate toward me. When he understood that I was attracted to Krishna, he devised a plan. His plan was like that devised by your father. During the Swayamvara, the prospective bridegrooms had to pierce the eyes of a fish with their arrows. The difference between the competition in your Swayamvara and the mine was that in your case, the fish was hanging openly on the ceiling in clear view. But in my case, the fish was covered with a cloth and could not and could only be seen by the reflection of the cloth in a pot of water. That was the special feature of my Swayambara.
The news of this device spread all over the world, and then the princes heard of it. They arrived at my father's capital city from all directions, fully equipped with armor and guided by their military instructors. Each of them desired to win me as his wife, and after another they raised the bow and an arrow left there for piercing the fish. Many could not even join the bowstring to the two ends of the bow, and without attempting to pierce the fish, they simply left the bow as it was and went away. Some, with great difficulty, drew the string from one end to the other, but being unable to tie the other end, they were suddenly knocked down by the springle bow. My dear queen, you will be surprised to know that at my Swayamvara meeting there were many famous kings and heroes present. Heroes like Jarasandha, Ambasatha, Shishupala, Bhimashena, Duryodhana, and Karna were of course able to string the bow, but they could not pierce the fish because it was covered, and they could not trace it out from the reflection. The celebrated hero of the Pandavas, Arjuna, was able to see the reflection of the fish on the water, but although with great care he traced out the location of the fish and shot an arrow, he did not pierce the fish in the right spot, but his arrow at least touched the fish, and so provided himself better than all the other princes. And so he proved himself better than all the other princes.
So we have to end here. This is our hour. Weekly time is up for reading Krishna book to Srila Prabhupada. Next week we'll hear the rest of this exciting story of Draupadi meeting the queens of Krishna. So mark your Krishna books, and we'll meet here next week the same time. Let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pacharane Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paskachade Shatarane. And to each other, Vanchakalpa Darubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Krishna Book, Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.